Good morning, this is Dan and Lee and our Sunday class. Oh no, this isn't Sunday class. It is Sunday class, but it's a special edition of the Sunday class.
Our pause.
Which is our pause, what is it about?
It's about the creator of the universe.
And what part?
The part that he created.
Lee is totally brain dead today.
Always.
But it's about Genesis chapter 1.
Economics of the Bible.
And the economics of the Bible. So I think this is our theme song of our Sunday class, so it's about time to start. Oh, the crowd is here, and it's time for class. Okay, Miss Lee, where are we reading today? Genesis chapter 1?
Yep, verses 20 through 23, it looks like.
What day is it?
It's the fifth day.
Fifth day. Okay, we've done all the other days, and now we're up to fifth day. And actually, I wanted to read something. I pushed the wrong button here to start with.
You don't have glasses on either.
Oh, yeah, I got them. Where'd they go?
I don't know.
Here they are. That's right. I got so many
when you
things.
get
I'm all
old,
wired up. Okay, there it is.
You can't see
now
very
I'm all
well.
wired up. What we're trying to do in this show, and I wrote it down so we get it clear. We're trying to do in this show is to show who God is. Genesis chapter 1 really shows who He is. He's a God of creativity, imagination. He first imagines, but that's not enough because that's daydreaming if you don't make something. And He's showing us you can't just imagine, you have to create something.
Produce,
and
right?
What that
Produce
takes
something.
is work.
Yeah.
He worked. He created. He took his imagination. He imagined the cosmos. He created the cosmos because he worked, and what was the third thing? Creativity, labor.
Resources.
Oh, and he made resources. And then he took those resources and he manufactured them. He made little manufacturing plants. And that's what we're to do. And we'll see how that's economics. That makes things work. So what we're trying to do here is to show how God is and how He acts, and who we are and how we are to act in relationship to Him and His created design. In other words, He gave him a garden, and it's a model of how things...
He hasn't given them yet.
Okay, but he's going to give him a garden, and that's why it's interesting, because Lee and I, because we decided to learn gardening well, and because the Bible talks in gardening and animal terms. Instead of going to seminary, we went studying Bible in Bible school, but instead of going to seminary, we decided to do farming and animal husbandry.
Oh.
Because that way we could learn how God made all this work. And really it is, because so many things are misrepresented when people talk about. We're persuaded that every lesson of virtue and fruitfulness you can learn in the garden if you're just willing. So economics is a branch of knowledge and revelation. It isn't just looking at knowledge, that is from science. It's revelation concerning the production, consumption, and transfer of resources. And I said resources, not money, because barter is one way you can transfer resources. And biblical economics focuses on the behavior, the interactions of the economic agents, and how economies work. So it focuses on the individual and how the individual is to work in the society. So the one and the many is there.
And the Bible gives us the guidelines for how to do all that.
And all this is kind of revealed in Genesis chapter 1, because the last thing God said after He made man, He said what? Genesis.
Fruitful? Is that what you're going for?
Yeah.
Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and rule it.
Fruitful, multiply, fill, rule, subdue.
I know.
Five things. Rule and subdue are kind of, in some translations, are called have dominion.
Yeah.
But the word has two parts. So what we've got is and God is a fruitful, multiplying God who rules and subdues. We are to be fruitful, multiplying images of God who rules and subdues. And Genesis chapter 1 is showing us all that, and the controlling verse in Genesis chapter 1 is verse 128. verse 1 and verse 128. Verse 1 is God in the beginning, God, and verse 128, man is in his image, and we're to be fruitful, multiply, fill, rule, and subdue. That is economics. Now, the rest of the Bible has economic impacts and economic statements, and we've seen where the gospel is economics. But today we're on the fifth day? Man,
Day
we're
5.
just flying through this.
Day 5.
So here today we get to create some of my most interesting creatures, and God calls them creatures.
I would say we don't ever fly through anything. We're plotters.
We're flying, man. We're just flying. We got through our definitions. We got through this definition. We got through purpose clause. Man, that's a lot of stuff in 5 minutes.
Okay, so Genesis.
And you didn't tell any big stories about the week.
Well,
Thanks.
which big story? We
Thanksgiving.
always have big stories.
Okay, we'll just go.
So we'll just go. We had many blessings,
blessings
and answers
and things
to prayers
and-
this
yeah.
last week of things
Opportunities
that need to be done.
to serve the Lord.
Opportunities to serve.
Just in daily life. Nothing. We're not doing missionary work. We're going out on purpose. It's just the interaction, and we'll tell you some of the stories as we go.
Okay. Then God said, "Let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens."
My 2 favorite things: the waters and the birds, the fish and the birds, fish and the birds. I love to fish.
Well,
and I love.
Wait a minute.
I love to have birds. I
Wait
love
a minute.
birds. I
Wait a
can't
minute.
have them too much anymore.
wait a minute. It's not just fish. It's swarms of living creatures. There's mammals in the oceans and the waters
Oh, that's
too.
right. There's
whales.
Well,
and
mammals
there's-
is a modern term,
Well, I guess so.
but it's okay because the Bible doesn't use scientific modern terms.
Well, there's whales. I don't know.
Whales
Are
would
they
be-
fish?
They're considered mammals. I think.
Mammals.
Yeah,
Okay,
'cause
whales.
they breathe.
Dolphins, sharks. We don't like those. We don't like sharks too much.
Well, sharks don't breathe.
They don't what?
They're air. They breathe
Oh,
water.
okay. All right.
You're-
Yeah, but the
you're missing-
whales have to go up
Whales
there and
do.
get the air. They have that.
Manatees.
Manatees.
Here
right,
in Florida,
yeah.
man, we got manatees coming out our ears.
Dolphins.
Yeah.
Dolphins.
Yeah.
The Loch Ness Monster.
No, it doesn't come up and breathe.
Yeah, it does.
No, it comes up, but it doesn't come up and breathe.
The Loch Ness Monster is a big.
Yeah, I know, but it breathes. They
Think
don't
it breathes?
know.
Well, we don't know.
You know what? They don't. Nobody knows because it's not known.
There's a lot of creatures like that, though.
But
that
what does
God
it say?
created.
He created something here in the seas.
Swarms of living creatures.
Okay,
In the
there's something. Go on.
well, we haven't
you
haven't
got
read
that.
that yet.
I'm
no.
trying to get you moving.
Okay, God created the great sea monsters.
Oh, the big stuff. What would be the great sea monsters?
Loch Ness Monster.
Loch Ness monster. I tried to hold you up. Here it comes.
Okay.
What else?
Oh gosh, it's got to be the humpback whale
Whales.
and just giant octopus and squid
Yeah.
and eels and I mean.
And
those
there's
are
a
kinda
whole
like
bunch of
monsters.
long necks, long fin things that
Yeah.
actually we've even Japanese fishermen have even pulled out of the water in my lifetime.
Yeah.
You
That
know,
they don't think exist anymore,
and
but they do.
said they died off 4 billion years ago, but they didn't.
Oh.
But there's all kinds of big things.
Sea monsters.
They're called sea monsters. Now, monster doesn't mean it has to be bad.
No.
This is before the fall. There's going to be very good. Monster means really big.
Really
big.
Yeah.
Kind of like a brontosaurus. It's
Yeah.
a really big
That's
thing.
a land monster.
Yeah, it's a land
A
monster.
dinosaur.
So the
Or a
word
dragon.
monster here is really big thing.
Great sea monsters are things that are almost too big for you to imagine.
Monstrous.
Yeah, huge.
It's like a skyscraper. It's monstrous. It's not evil. It's monstrous.
Yeah,
It's
which
big.
means huge. Yeah, and every
So-
living creature that moves.
Yeah, all
So
those
every-
little things, all the amoebas,
Lobsters, shrimp,
all the
crabs,
shrimps, all the one cell little things that what are they called?
anemones,
Yeah, those things.
jellyfish,
Yeah.
Everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
Or go to an aquarium.
Yeah, go to an aquarium. You can see
and that's
all
not
the
even
stuff.
everything that
You'll
you
see
in
all
an
the stuff
aquarium.
that you can imagine.
Yeah.
But here we see he created these and the birds are for the air because God created the world. Remember, He created it. He divided.
Well, I
he
haven't
divided
read
the
that part
seas.
yet. I haven't read that part yet.
I'm not going where you think I'm going.
Oh.
He divided the seas from the land. He prepared a place for them.
Yep.
So He had water for these fish. See, he was working toward a purpose.
Uh-huh.
And he had air, oxygen, nitrogen,
all that stuff.
And it has mass. It's mass, so they can actually use. Do you think these birds thought through when they were one-celled animals, and they thought through about how they could use the laws of aviation? What is that called? I just blanked out on the word.
Oh.
It's the laws of.
It's not thermodynamics.
No, it's
I don't know what it's
I know
called.
thermodynamics is the word I was thinking of. Laws of. Anyway, it's the law that.
Okay, did they think that?
You think they thought up this and they thought, well, we'll just go fly for a while?
Did they think we have to be hollow boned so that we can?
Oh yeah,
lift?
have hollow bones. No,
Aerodynamics?
this is aerodynamics. Yeah, that's the word.
Sometimes it takes two of us a little
it's
longer.
getting harder and harder. We're going to have a third person because both of us are losing it more and more. But the thing is, they were designed to live in the air. Now, some of the birds were designed to dive down into the water.
Yeah.
Okay? So we have all kinds of interesting design things that if they don't work, it would, like if the fish were just to be there and then they had to develop these gills to get the oxygen, they would have drowned before they got there.
Yeah.
And if the birds had to learn to fly, do you know what's the most amazing thing? We have these hawks that show up in our yard every year, these red-tailed hawks, and they have a nest, and they lay their eggs.
Otherwise known as chicken hawks.
Yeah. And they lay their eggs. It's one of the reasons we don't have chickens, because they would be...
We're swarming
we
with
thought about it, but
hawks.
there's red-tailed hawks around a lot, and there's buzzards. But they lay their eggs, and within just a few weeks, we hear those chirp, 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 chirp.
Yeah.
And then within about 4 to 6 weeks,
it
they're
like
flying.
No time at all.
They develop the feathers, and they fly.
And
this is an amazing thing to me.
And it's so interesting.
They're designed to go from this egg to up in the trees. If they'd have just wiggled the wrong way, they'd fall out and die.
Yep.
And there were birds when I was a kid that would fall out of the trees and die.
It's so interesting that we had a nest that was right over our house, and we could sit here and watch that mother bird teaching those babies to fly.
Well, encouraging
them.
Yeah.
She'd take them, she'd get them out of the nest, and they'd get on a limb.
Yeah, and
then
want to go.
she'd fly to the next tree.
Yeah, they didn't want to go.
And they'd cry, and she'd talk to them, and then finally you'd see them, and they'd get enough spurt to go over there, and it was
they could fly.
so neat to watch.
And it wasn't that they learned by falling down.
Mm-mm.
They had developed. Mama knew when they had developed that wingspan properly, and she tempted them out.
Yeah.
She was over here calling them, come here, come here, come here, come here.
In hawk language.
Yeah, it was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And they would fly. It was just an amazing thing of how that had to be designed. But anyway, back to that's evidence for design. But the thing is, this is evidence of this next thing that God is going to.
Because
he said to the birds and the fish something similar that he said to man, but it's different.
Okay, God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind.
Now that's very important, and I don't think it says the seed is in it, but that's implied. Yeah. The seed is in it, and they produced after their kind. And go ahead.
And every winged bird after its kind.
After its kind.
And God saw that it was good.
It was good.
God blessed them, saying...
Oh, wait, here's the blessing. Here's the commandment to the birds. This is the blessing.
Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas and let birds multiply on the earth.
Where's the rule and subdue?
It's not in here.
Oh, that's right. They're not humans. That's the uniqueness. See, animals will fill the earth. This is why all of these projections that come from these overpopulation people they always have to say we're all animals. So we don't have the ingenuity to know when we've got enough. Mm-hmm. And have self-control and self-government. And what happens is God said, no, animals are to keep filling. This is why when we use animals for food, fiber, power, and pleasure, when man has a purpose for them, and he rules and subdues them properly, That's called farming.
Mm-hmm.
It's called fish farming. It can be bird farming. We've done both. We did some fish farming, not a lot of it, but we had a little lake and we raised some fish and we stocked the pond and we caught them and they just never ran out. They kept multiplying. Why? Because they were following this blessing. And do you know how many eggs a bluegill lays?
No, I don't have any idea.
250,000.
In a lifetime?
No, one year.
1 year?
One bluegill.
That's a lot of multiplying.
Now, if you got 50 bluegill and you got 250,000,
you don't have enough room.
See, that's why my dad taught me in a little pond. If you caught little bluegill, you always threw them to the side for the birds to eat. And the reason is because they overpopulate really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Humans are to rule that, and that's why we have to think about, okay, what do we use this little bitty bluegill for? And if we keep the population down, that's one reason you put bass in a pond, because the bass eat the little bluegill.
Mm-hmm.
So they feed, the bass get really big, and they don't have nearly as many babies. And that's where you balance a pond. See, by ruling and subduing, man can balance a pond by having bass, bluegill, and catfish.
And that's why I guess nowadays they have where when you go fishing, they have seasons when you can catch certain fish,
right.
And they have to be a certain length.
And they have limits.
You know, because you want a certain size to grow more and reproduce, and the other ones are big and you can catch them and all that. So.
But you also notice that the bluegill or the brim or the red ear, they're all pretty much the same thing. They always have a big limit. You can catch 50 of those a day, where bass maybe 2 or 3 or 5.
Grouper, maybe 1 and...
Grouper, you're lucky if they let you catch 1. But see, and the reason is because they haven't learned how to rule and subdue those well, where fish farming is really what we do in all of our public lakes now.
Yeah.
We do fish farming.
That's why you have a license where you can catch so much.
And that's why the government owns the fish. We license that we can buy them by fishing. And we can go in there and fish. Now, if you have your private land, you can do your own fish farming, eat all you want to.
Yeah.
So, but that's economics. And that's how economics works. And by man ruling and subduing fish, and we do the same thing with birds. There was one time when I was very young, there were very few, what do they call them? Geese, Canada geese. We lived on the Canadian flyway in the Midwest, and there were very few. Mm-hmm. And they had done this a little before I was young, right after, I think at the end of World War II, maybe even a little earlier. They began to set up places where they grew corn, and they had parks along the flyway, and you couldn't harvest the corn, or they harvested part of the crop. I think that's mainly what they did. The farmers would harvest part of the crop, but they wouldn't harvest the whole crop. So when they flew down, the geese would eat.
I have to say, that is one thing I miss in Florida. I miss seeing the geese and hearing them.
That's true.
I used to love to hear that oh.
Well, we do have those cranes.
Sand cranes.
Sand cranes. They kind of sound like that.
Yeah, but
we used to have some white geese that flew around here. I haven't seen them in a few years. But see, the whole thing is by farming those, they never run out. Mm-mm. We hunt them, we eat them, we use their feathers, and all those things. And
goose down blankets and vests. And
that's where
pillows.
God. This is economics again. Mm-hmm. God gave the animals to be fruitful, multiply, fill. That's what they try to do. They're just an animal's not trying to. See, this is where. An animal, I've asked this to thousands of people, do you think the animals are trying to survive or be fruitful? And nobody ever thought of that. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't think of it either because I got it from Humanist Magazine, which is an atheist magazine. And this atheist wrote an article. He says, it really looks to me more like the animals are trying to be fruitful than they're trying to survive.
Yeah.
And I go, wow. And never heard of that guy again because he wasn't allowed to write anymore.
You can't write
because that wasn't politically correct in Atheist Magazine. But it is the principle of nature that God has given, and it's an economic principle. The animals are trying, and in the zoo, I would sit out there, and I would look at them, watch all these different kinds of animals. We had hundreds of animals, probably 50, maybe 75 varieties at times, and I never saw one trying to survive. I saw one always trying to be fruitful. They were always trying. Now they would flee. That's different than survival, because fleeing, see, at this time God created them, and you're going to see man and the animals were really interacting. They weren't eating each other.
Right.
That came after the flood, and then the animals were given the fleeing mechanism.
The fear
After
of
the flood,
man.
the fear of man came on them. And that's probably genetics.
Yeah.
Because we've seen that in raising dogs, and even llamas or whatever. And even I've seen it in buffalo. Because the buffalo in the frontier couldn't be kept in by barbed wire, but the buffalo today can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably breeding.
Yeah.
They took the ones that were less wild, and they bred toward that, so they could. And now we can have herds of buffalo, just like cattle
on farms.
everything.
Yeah.
Because you breed them to be fruitful and under the dominion or rule of
And
man.
I have to say,
That's economics, Lee.
I love buffalo meat. I like it more than beef.
Lee
actually.
loves buffalo meat.
Yep.
You're right, she does.
I do.
It's
a weird thing.
I find it okay. I just don't think it tastes that much different.
Oh, I really like it.
But yeah. And
so
buffalo,
shall I finish our verse for the day?
Yeah, we need to go on.
Okay. So God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let the birds multiply on the earth."
Okay, these
there
are
was
three
evening,
things.
and there was morning, a fifth day.
There were these three things: the animals, fruitful, multiply, and fill. Genesis 1:28. When man's created, be fruitful, multiply, fill, rule and subdue. Different. Very different. Now this has to do with a modern problem we're facing. What is that modern problem?
I'm not sure where you're going with
Environmentalism.
this. Oh, okay, yes.
See, because animals fit into nature, the bird, in other words, they have to have within nature, and that's why man has to tend the garden. He has to tend the seas. He has to tend the parks. He is to rule over them in the way that God rules over us.
Well, I thought it was interesting. Do I have just a minute to say something?
You got a lot of time.
Okay, I thought it was interesting the other day. We were talking to a young man that used to work in a butcher shop, and he had the opportunity to be taught, and he apparently had the skill, because this butcher that had been a butcher for like forever wanted to teach him how to be a butcher, and he was good at it. And then all of a sudden, something happened, and he decided, well, they're people too. I can't kill them. I can't butcher them and cut them up. And so, he
got caught into this postmodern new age environmentalism that all of us are people too. And that is so bad and destructive and causes great starvation on the earth. And
now I will say for me personally, I don't ever want to be a butcher. I'm not cut out for it.
Well, Lee can't understand this, because see, I used to be a fisherman.
Well,
commercial.
Let me finish.
Well, I want to fill this in. And as a commercial fisherman, we would catch hundreds of fish, and we could sell them at 25 cents a pound if we just took them right to there, just like they were. I think we had to gut them, but I think that's all. Maybe not. I maybe just took them.
That's a long time ago to remember.
I was a teenager. But if we cleaned them, in other words, we cut out the guts and took the skins off, these are catfish, and cut the heads off, we could get 75 cents a pound. So it was very profitable to do the work, to mix our creativity with our labor into our resource, which was these fish we just caught, and multiply our earnings. And it took us, we learned how to clean catfish so quickly. I could clean a catfish in about 25 seconds. And you could do in an hour, you could make a lot of money. And we take those to the fish market down there on the bayou. It was on the Mississippi, on the Ohio River, and it was a little boat that you did, and they sold them to the people that came down there, and you'd make a good amount of money real quick. When Lee could never understand this. I forgot where I was telling this story. Lee could never understand.
I don't ever want to be a butcher.
Because I would say, boy, when you clean fish, it makes you hungry.
Yeah.
When you and hunting's the same way. When you shot a squirrel or a rabbit, I never did deer, a quail, you just got hungry.
I've had cattlemen tell me that, and ostrich farmers tell me that too.
Because what happens, you then have the fresh meat. You usually go in and cook it for lunch because you eat what you did.
Right.
And if you started connecting that cleaning with the eating. Because you trained your brain. Just like the French kids eat everything, train people to eat everything.
Yeah. My
And
problem
Lee
was
never did
I
that
grew
as
up
a
in
kid.
the city. I
Yeah,
never
I know.
did fishing and hunting.
And that's why it is very important that people learn that. But it isn't cannibalism. Because the New Age, postmodernists, environmentalists believe we're all people too, and that's very destructive.
Right. There's nothing wrong with hunting and fishing.
Well, it would have been in Genesis chapter 1.
Well, yeah. But, I mean, today. I'm talking about today. Now, I'm saying from personal experience, I don't have a problem.
The world changed after the flood.
I don't have a problem doing that. I accept it. I like to eat meat. But for me, I have, from a childhood experience, a great fear of blood.
I know.
And so I have a real hard time with the butchering part. I cook it and stuff.
You're kind of chaotic when it comes to certain things.
Yeah.
I get you.
That's me.
I've lived with you for 51 years.
Yeah.
I know this.
Yes.
Okay, well, this has been a good lesson. And the lesson is, and the purpose in talking about these things is very, very key, because our purpose, if I can get it up here again, and I think I lost it, is to give an economic understanding of Genesis chapter 1 and the Bible, because the Bible is an economic system. So, this has been Dan and Lee in our Sunday class. If you want to see all of our stuff, you can go to theroddenreporter.com. Yeah, that's it. Theroddenreporter.com. I just blanked out. Or you can go to our Facebook pages, and the way to get to those, go to theroddenreporter.com, and there's links. So everything is at one place, and you can find it real easy. Miss Lee, it's been really good today. Class is over.